Colin had a problem and a microphone to spare. Thomas took it up and so the podcast went to air. For weeks and months they trolled through every single DVD. They've unwrapped all the ones they can and now they're cellulose free. Now they're cellulose free.
Hello dear listener and welcome to Cellulose Free. My name is Colin and with me as always is my fellow film watcher, compadre and son, Thomas.
Hi, hello.
I took about 3 breaths then and still didn't manage to get through.
That's a shame, that is.
It is. What have you been up to?
Not a whole lot.
You have been sitting there. Just sitting there and you know what's to come and that's all you can give us.
Well, I introduced some of my family to the complexities of the 12 Monkeys TV series.
Yep.
And that'll continue on for a handful of weeks.
I do confess that I am enjoying it. I went into it with some fear and trepidation as to why would anyone mess with a storyline that was done so well in a movie. But yeah, a very interesting take.
Because they had a completely unrelated pilot ready, and suddenly they realised, oh, we have the rights to 12 Monkeys, and we can do something with that. Yes, that is genuinely how that happened.
Hang on, a completely unrelated pilot?
A pilot or an unrelated... names. Or possibly an unrelated script. I can't remember. Point is... It wasn't originally a 12 Monkeys show.
Okay, but then they got the rights and made it a 12 Monkeys show.
They had the rights already.
Oh, okay.
It's a Universal Cable... What was then Universal Cable Productions. And is now Universal Content Productions, because streaming exists.
Yep. So I am certainly enjoying it. I think Brianna is enjoying it too. I think... between us is some fear and trepidation that it will lose momentum.
The good news is that this is the only non-critically looked up to season. The others,
right? The
others are more looked up to than this one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Apparently.
Okay.
Apparently, it got better for the critics.
Fair enough.
So either it'll get even better, or the critics were wrong. And
look, we have experienced that on many occasions with the films that we reviewed where the critics have been wrong. We have been right, the critics have been wrong. We'll find out whether that happens today. Anything else you've been up to?
Been very poorly trying to get myself ready for an unexpected additional episode of Schlag den Star on the weekend.
But that was it. You told us.
Yeah.
I could even bring up...
I thought that would be it, and we all thought that would be it, and then it turned out that Poseidon had an extra Saturday just lying around between various things.
Oh, look what I've found behind the couch cushions.
It's
an extra Saturday.
We've got all this primetime space just going to waste. Quick, go book me 2 celebrities.
Doesn't matter who, just get them. Get them.
Oh, Alton's available? Good. Ron, commentator? Yep. Okay, cool. We're good to go. We've got all the crew.
Well, may your training be effective in getting yourself fit and ready for that.
Which is to say, shifting my sleep over to a time that makes it possible for me to be up for it to start at 6 in the morning.
Good. Me.
Yes.
Because I'm... if you're dredging that barrel, I think you're done. So I'm going to... I went for a big, long walk yesterday.
You did.
Many kilometres. But it was good. I really did need it for both my physical and mental health. It was a good walk, and I got to walk opposite the harbour of Hobart and take some pictures, one of which captures 3 large vessels that I'll include on the Facebook page. So in port at the moment, in the port of Hobart, we have the RV Investigator, which is an Australian research survey vessel, which is actually home here. Quite an impressive vessel. The French L'Astrolabe, which is a French icebreaker. So the Investigator is 93.9 metres long. L'Astrolabe is 72 metres long. And coming in at a whopping 121.62 metres long is the US Coast Guard vessel Polar Star, which is also an icebreaker. In fact, it has just come back from Antarctica, where it broke a world record for getting the furthest south in a vessel through navigable waters. So it reached 78 degrees, 44 minutes and 1.32 seconds south. So it's about 450 metres off the edge of the Ross Ice Shelf, beating out the current world record, which was set 25 years ago by its sister ship, which has well and truly retired. These ships are old. The Polar Star and its sister ship were built in the mid-70s, and I believe the Polar Star has sort of been decommissioned and then recommissioned and decommissioned. These ships require a lot of maintenance and require budgets to perform such maintenance, but the threat was that they would end up with American ships going up mainly north, Alaska way and further, suddenly being left without an icebreaker was a bit of a worry. So they've kept this thing going. It also holds the record for the furthest north a US government ship has gone during winter, and the furthest south an American government ship has gone during winter.
During winter is important.
It is indeed.
Because the North Pole, it's just ice. It's just ice on water. You can take a submarine up there.
That's
fine.
right. And those records are for surface vessels too. So, but it was quite impressive to see these vessels in port. We're blessed with a very deep seaport here in Hobart, and we see all sorts of vessels.
And yet we still can't get a vessel designed to go under the bridge.
Has that still not been authorised?
I believe at the moment it's provisionally authorised until they do some testing.
Right. As long as all the crew duck. The Derwent River is crossed by a large bridge called the Tasman Bridge, which was ostensibly built so that large vessels could go under it. And then in 1976, a boat managed to not go under it by going through it.
Yeah.
Causing a number of lives lost and the
middle came down.
And the western side of Hobart and the eastern side of Hobart were effectively cut off, apart from a couple of hour drive, for a number of years. So,
want to go to Bridgewater?
Yeah. So since then, they rebuilt the section, and since then the bridge is closed whilst vessels go under. It's called the closing the gate after the horse has bolted manoeuvre.
It has a middle again now.
It has a middle again. I have, in fact, been a pedestrian on the bridge who got partway over and then realised, hey, there's no cars going over the bridge. And then looked over to the other side of the bridge and there was a large vessel. Because, to keep in mind, upstream is where all the fueling depots are. So all of these big ships, if they're planning to refuel in Hobart, which is one of the reasons why they come here, is they have to go under this bridge.
So I take it you didn't notice a pedestrian red light?
Well, I was not walking particularly fast. The red light hadn't come on.
Right.
So it must have come on just after I had started my crossing. So, yeah, it was cool. There was a brief temptation of jumping over the rail onto the road just to say that I did. But there are too many cameras on the bridge, so I didn't. Anyway, I digress. That was my day. That was my week, my highlight of the week, and I'm still feeling it. I'm grossly overweight and very unfit, and that was my start into improving things, hopefully.
Yeah, I probably need to do some work along those lines too.
We should probably both stop snacking as well.
Yeah, that'd help.
Yes. That was an overweight pause, wasn't it? Okay. Hey, let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's watch a film. We have an interesting film to watch. Why are we watching the film we're watching this week?
We're watching the film we're watching this week because we watched Gattaca last week.
What on earth is the connection?
The connection is Andrew Niccol.
Right. So Andrew Niccol wrote and directed Gattaca from last week, and he
wrote and
produced the film we're watching this week, which is, of course...
The Truman Show.
You selected this.
I did.
You have seen it.
I have.
On numerous occasions, including in English.
Yep.
I have seen it once, I think, many, many years ago. I think I've seen the whole thing, but I'm a bit vague as to what I have actually seen or what everyone knows about it. So
Great. So it'll be me asking the big question when we come back.
No, that's my job, which
Oh.
you keep trying to usurp. But
I only usurp it when it seems relevant that it be me asking the question.
okay, all right. Well, we'll see how we go. It is not on a disc.
Nope.
We're going to stream it. What is it all about for those who do not know?
You know, it's a slice of life documentary. It's totally normal film.
Yes.
Definitely no secrets going on.
None whatsoever.
No big conspiracy.
No Hunger Game-esque, controlled by a big conglomerate corporation.
Nope. Nobody is secretly being broadcast to millions of people.
No.
It's not happening.
No. We're going to assume most of you know what it's about.
Yeah.
Because Thomas can't be bothered finding a plot synopsis.
Well, you know.
Where is it streaming?
Prime.
Prime. Right.
Video.
I'll bring up Amazon Prime Video, and Truman doesn't realise that his quaint hometown is a giant studio set run by visionary producer/director/creator Ed Harris, that folks living and working there...
And then it gets cut off.
Yeah, I think that's what you read last week.
Yep, that is what I read from last week.
I'm going to hit the watch now button. We're going to watch this film after I've called Daniel, who wants to watch it. Then we'll talk about it when we catch you on the flip side.
Turn to side B.
You mongrel. So what did you think?
No. I'm not going to answer that. You're going to answer that.
Am I?
What did you think?
It's a good film. That sounds very much like your response.
There's a but. There's a but.
No. I'm giving your classic response.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a good film. But...
Yeah, there's the but.
Yeah, I still do have that clash of Jim Carrey.
Right.
He was the right character for the job. But there were occasionally where he rose above the role. His caricature just rose... I'm finding this really hard to express, but it's sort of... You know those weird squidgy balls where they're like a string mesh around them, and if you squeeze them, suddenly bubbles pop out of them. It's a bit like that, where if you don't squeeze too hard, everything's fine. But if you squeeze too hard, then suddenly you have these little bulbous bits coming out. That's how I find his performance in that. Occasionally they squeeze too hard, or he squeezes too hard.
I see where you're coming from. I disagree.
Good.
But I see where you're coming from.
Yeah. And I think that is a deep-seated problem that I have with him as an actor, is that for the most part he is larger than life when performing. And this film often required him to not be. He had to be the everyman and not the larger than life. And so even in places where that should have been contained, I don't think it was entirely. There were places where that larger-than-lifedness was appropriate, when he fully recognised that something was definitely going on. but it occasionally clashed with my sense of reality. And in a show that is like a reality TV show, that was a slight problem for me. Maybe I'm reading too much into that. Which is interesting because this was well before any of the reality TV shows that...
The giants.
Yeah, but even those giants, you don't have the scenario where the person is not aware that they are being observed. And it's certainly there have been comedic shows before this where hidden cameras and pranking people into doing things. But this really isn't a prank. There is that attempt of scripting a life around someone's obliviousness.
Speaking of giants,
Yes.
as far as those series go, Expedition Robinson, which was the precursor to Survivor,
Yep.
and its various forms, started about a year before this came out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Not long. So presumably it was definitely already being worked on by then. Close comparisons, maybe Big Brother.
Big Brother is the obvious.
With that hidden camera that you know is there. But
Yeah. That is that separation from how this is.
One interesting comparison that I've not actually watched, because it never made it over here, and I haven't been able to find a sneaky way to watch it.
Right.
The Joe Schmo Show.
Right.
Broadcast over in America. The premise was that it was run exactly as if it was some cheap reality show, but there was only one actual contestant involved.
Okay.
Everyone else was an actor. Whose job was to convince this one contestant that this was an actual reality show that was going on.
So were they acting as other contestants?
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
That's the big deceit. The closest, I guess, to that type of deceit that I've come across is The Mole, where you've got a number of contestants, and in amongst that there is someone who is in on things and
is working with the producers to make the money not be so big.
Yes. Speaking of money, I think it was absolute genius, the whole concept of product placement, but not doing the ultimate deceit and using real-life products. So they were all fictional products, as far as I could tell.
I looked up Mococo, and all I could find was labels people had mocked up for it.
Yeah. As far as I can tell, every single product placement in this show is a fake product. Whereas I think a lesser director, a lesser producer would have just absolutely run with that and taken advantage of real product placement, which would have made it a much lesser show, I think.
Looking back at the modern media landscape, there's another comparison that we can draw here that's more in-universe, soap operas.
Yeah, it is very much a soap/reality television, and that's, I guess, where the Big Brothers and to a lesser extent, Survivor, you have relationships developing that aren't necessarily real relationships, but there are certainly people who really get into the relationships that are going on. The biggest, I guess, hatred that I have of reality television would be the ones that completely take advantage of playing with relationships and faking relationships. Would be the Bachelor and Farmer Wants a Wife.
I absolutely hate that the media landscape is such that what is profitable, what is immensely profitable, is shows that take advantage of young, reasonably attractive people who don't know any better. Yeah. And the few who do, but go on anyway because they think it will be good for their image. Yeah,
they want their 15 minutes of fame. So let's get married at first sight.
Yeah.
So very much the soap, and watching the huge audiences absolutely rooting for Truman and having good relationships and reflecting back at bad ones. And
But best moments tape that the bar has.
And the other soap connection that was very much a knowing nod in this film was, how do we explain the return of his father? Amnesia.
Yeah.
The really long-running, low-budget soaps, especially in the US, use amnesia so often as an explanation of somebody's return after many years. It was cool.
It is interesting that we're talking about soaps as Neighbours makes its departure from British and Australian screens. The British, it turns out, more significant.
Absolutely more significant. I think that had a lot to do with off-season transplant of actors as well. They would do the pantomimes and things like that. And also the want of living in a place that is sunny all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Britain isn't.
Yeah.
And Australia isn't either, to be clear, but
No.
it's sunnier than Britain.
No, which is interesting. Certainly as a child growing up, soaps were very rarely, if ever, seen in our house. But my grandmother would follow EastEnders, which is a very long-running UK soap. And that is very much grounded in the rough end of East End, or the everyday end of
I can't remember.
East End.
Was it EastEnders or possibly Coronation Street that only broke its first series because COVID-19 happened? It was one of those two.
That's right. They're up to episode many thousands of, and yes, they had to stop filming for.
But it
I
finally,
think it might have been Coronation Street.
It broke transmission.
Yeah.
It was over for some time.
Yep.
And then everything came back slowly, except Neighbours, which is going away the middle of the year sometime.
Yes. But we do still have what's the other one?
Home and Away.
Home and Away. All I could think was Summer Bay. Okay, so Truman as a child, you have scenes of him wanting to be an explorer and things like that. One would think that he would have clicked that you don't have sunsets with the moon being full and roughly in the same section of the sky.
There's... What are they teaching Truman?
That is
in
true.
School?
It would have been explained away. And that certainly in the time that this is being broadcast, in quotation marks, it's a very 60s aesthetic, even though it's set in a more technological time frame.
Newspapers you can look at and they say 1996, so... just...
But it's an alternate 1996 on two different levels. Truman's world is very 60s based. There's no computers. I don't think there's any mobile phones. There was a cordless phone, I think, but his job would normally entail having a computer in front of him, and he didn't.
No.
But the world outside, with that studio and all of the screens and computers that are controlling the weather and things like that, there's a disconnect between the worlds.
The way this world is, this film was filmed in a planned community.
Yeah.
It had been built unrelated to the show, but, before everyone moves in. Ooh, that looks interesting.
Yeah. It's an ideal set for that, even though there's a nuclear plant just across the river.
The lengths that they go to try to convince him to stay in Sea Haven become less and less convincing, a lot more contrived.
Yeah.
Just a wall of fire. A very thin wall of fire.
It was a Peter Weir film.
Mm-hmm.
This is the third Peter Weir film that is featured on our dual podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Can you name the others?
I feel like I recalled which ones it was, but I can't now.
One I would have instantly remembered was Picnic at Hanging Rock.
Yep. Yeah.
The other one I'd completely forgotten, in more ways than one, and that was The Way Back, where you
Right,
had
yes.
the people crossing the...
Yes.
Yeah. There are... I'm going to start a little competition here.
Ooh.
Yeah, I am. Just a 1 week only competition.
Let's see how much response we get.
Yeah, that's...
It's been kind of up and down lately.
Okay.
We love you.
We do love you. There are 3 other Peter Weir films on the shelf, 2 of which I have marked as want to rewatch, and both of those I don't think you have seen.
Right.
The other one is marked that both of us want to watch. So all of the Peter Weirs will eventually be seen if this crazy podcast keeps going.
Oh, it'll probably keep going.
But one of them that you are interested in watching, I don't think you've seen either. So all of you, dear listeners, have one guess as to one of those films, and we'll see how you go. Put your contributions wherever you contribute and suggest one of those Peter Weir films that is on the shelf and we're going to eventually watch.
Great.
Cool. Thomas is madly going through the database and finding out what they were.
It's difficult to cross-reference these things.
Yes.
On an iPad, while you're also trying to work out which of your notes you want to bring up next.
Yeah. Have you worked that out?
So, morals.
Yes. It's a nasty film.
Conceptually, it's not moral.
No, it's awful. Absolutely awful.
The timeline starts with the selection of an unwanted pregnancy.
Yeah, from what, 7?
5, I think?
Or 5. There were 5 unwanted pregnancies on their way.
Based on whichever comes out first, we've got an air date to meet.
Oh dear.
And then we gaslight this poor boy who becomes a poor man for 30 years.
And his best friend, in quotes, is, even after these 30 years, having lines fed to him through, presumably an earpiece.
The last thing that I would do
is
lie to you, he says tearfully and with all the emotion of a professional liar.
Yeah.
And then, to top that all off, they're trying to go for a storyline in which Truman and some love interest, they don't actually care which, conceive a child
on screen.
And then presumably have that child also in this messed up universe.
Yeah, and it becomes a generational thing. It's icky. Really, really icky. It is ickier than Farmer Marries at First Sight.
It's... At least they've signed up for something.
Yes, that's right. They were going into it as adults.
Truman didn't have any rights, and already they'd been signed away.
Yeah. I've got nothing else.
Right.
You empty your pot
I will go off, as they say.
Yeah.
Fun detail.
Mm.
The twins,
yes,
Ron and Don, who corner Truman and push him into a conveniently placed billboard,
yes,
were police officers who were working security for the film.
Oh, really?
And had built up a good rapport with the cast.
Oh, wow.
And so that happened.
They became a pivotal couple of actors. That's cool. I like that.
So, winding way back to the start of the film, we open with sort of a documentary and credits that are in-universe credits. These are not credits for any of the actors who are playing characters in The Truman Show. These are in-universe credits, and that's interesting to me.
Yep.
A lot of vignette cameras being used for that hidden camera look. A bunch of pinhole button cameras. That's some nice pieces of set dressing.
I confess that there were times where the view position of the camera didn't match anywhere that camera could actually be.
No.
And the movement, especially of the camera, was sometimes very much fudged.
It is a wonder that this whole thing did not fall apart sooner, because a bunch of those, even the vignette camera shots, are in places where Truman should be able to see that there's a camera there.
Yeah.
It really does all come crashing down very quickly. I had to go back and check on which day the final day is.
Mm-hmm.
The film The Truman Show runs from day 10,909 to day 10,913.
Right.
In 6 days from the starlight falling down to his eventual exit.
Did you say 9 to 13?
Yes, 9 to 13.
That's 4 days.
That is 4 or 5 days, yes. That is not 6 days. It's shorter. It's even shorter than I thought it was.
It was.
The whole thing just comes crumbling down. The starlight falls down. A small rain thing follows Truman about.
Yeah.
Those are unrelated to each other. The actor for his dad invades the set, and that is again unrelated to any of those things happening.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes a lot harder to keep things up. The radio going off with directions.
Yeah. It was a very, very sudden collapse into
a confluence of failures.
Yes.
A lot of subliminal and not so subliminal messaging trying to keep Truman from travelling anywhere. The poster with the plane with lightning going through it. This could happen to you.
That's so-called travel agent that really doesn't want you to go anywhere.
And then the bus breaks down. They're actors.
They're actors. Yes, but it was interesting later on where the bus driver, who could completely failed to be able to drive the bus and crunched the gears until the bus broke down, was then suddenly put in the situation where he had to drive the boat.
Pilot the boat.
And says, I don't know how to pilot the boat. I'm a bus driver.
Can't drive the boat. They're actors. On Arches, somewhere out on this film set, I know, you're looking at the time, and I know, I have a lot of notes.
He has a lot of notes.
I have a lot of notes.
I'm yawning.
On a set of Arches, somewhere on the film set, are the words, unus pro omnibus, omnis pro uno, meaning one for all for one. Which is just... That's some theming there. That's good. You've done a good job, set designer, putting that up there. Assuming that was the set designer's job and not just part of this planned community for some reason. Something that I don't think I'd picked up on before in this confluence of failures. He's looking through the photo book and eventually comes across a photo from his wedding in which I assume Meryl is wearing a ring that she probably shouldn't be wearing if she is Truman's loving wife.
Yeah, I couldn't quite... My eyes weren't letting me see what was going on there. I thought that maybe she was crossing her fingers.
Maybe.
Because he made a mention later on.
Also possible.
He wanted to speak to her, and that was right after seeing this photo, and he said something, just cross your fingers, and seemed to be prompting her, saying, I'm onto something here. But I could be wrong. It could have been to do with the ring. I don't know.
The Lauren and or Sylvia plot is another illustration of why I don't think this whole facade should have lasted as long as it did.
Yeah.
Because they put this actress very close to Truman and then didn't give her enough background to work with. Yeah. For one thing.
Yeah.
And also she was actively trying to get him to realise. That's another problem. But a skydiver drops in at some point into this closed dome that doesn't have planes flying over it. Which it shouldn't work.
No.
It doesn't.
No.
I think that might be the only thing that truly took me out of this whole scheme.
Yep.
I don't think I'd realised how silly that was.
Yeah. I mean, the film is a black comedy. But that took you out, and me as well. I had visions of a hatch in the top of this dome, and somebody, but the very
huge.
concept of it actually happening is just ridiculous. And Jim Carrey took me out of what is still a black comedy.
We get about halfway through the film. Truman has his massive breakdown and discovers all sorts of things that are wrong. And it's only now, as we're having a chat with Marlon on the unfinished bridge, as they usually do, that we finally get a good look inside the control room. And in fact, we spend quite some time outside of the main body of the piece.
Yes.
We go through the interview and we talk about the crew doing what the crew do.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'd quite realised how long it took to get to that point.
Yep. Speaking of that point, the Hunger Games vibe with the television interviewer was very, very strong there. Very strong.
Yeah, I can definitely pinpoint the exact character that you are thinking of.
Yep. They were the same person, even though they weren't the same person.
And then Truman escapes, and we completely give up the facade. Moon becomes a giant floodlight, just scanning over the place. We send the sun up. We send everyone to first positions. It's entirely the wrong time. An interesting line that really gets me into the headspace of Christoph, who, to be clear, is a god analogy. The line from Christoph as he switches to the cabin cam, and he's like, that's our hero shot. He doesn't actually care that the whole thing is falling down around him. He wants to make good television. Yeah. And eventually it turns out that he can't anymore, because Truman makes an exit.
He broke the fourth wall.
The hard cut to the music as the boat breaks through the wall of the dome. That's just good editing.
Yeah.
Just before the end of the film, we have this attempt at justification from Christoph that, quote, there is no more truth out there than in here. That idea that whatever Truman is looking for out there isn't anything new.
Yeah. The lies are still out there, as they are in here. But he went anyway.
He went
as
anyway.
As he should have.
And then everyone celebrates and go for their TV guide. Because ultimately it's
right,
just
we need
television.
something else to watch. And yes, that is forgotten. As will happen with Neighbours.
Obviously there will be the diehards out there. That Truman bar will possibly need to do a rethink of its business strategy. Built your entire brand around a show that's just ended forever. Good job. And that's it. We see Sylvia celebrating and getting up to possibly leave and meet Truman, but we don't see that.
And
it's important that we don't see that, because
that's right.
Truman has exited the stage.
That's right. And again, that was a very, very shrewd director's decision, I think, to end with so much unknown potential for Truman now that he has stepped through that door into what to him is the unknown.
And then finally we have some out-of-universe credits.
We do. And pretty ugly ones at that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have picked that font.
No. Good film. Good film.
Yeah, I'm happy that I chose to follow up Gattaca with that.
Yep. All right, we shall move on then.
The following segment has no title. Thank you.
There was some good discussion.
There was some chatter.
Over on Discord. Entos Fratu picked up on us mentoring Kmart. He wasn't aware that we have Kmart here in Australia.
We do.
It did used to be related to the Kmart over in the US.
Very vaguely.
But then the company in charge of American Kmart gave up more control to Kohl's group.
Yep.
And then some more, and then they were out of it.
Yep.
And then American Kmart went on to have 2 bankruptcies.
Yeah. And interestingly, just to extend the story, so Kmart Australia is still very strong. In fact, after a bit of a dip where Australian Target looked like it was going to cause problems with Kmart stores, certainly when Australian Target started up in Tasmania, the Kmart store that I worked in, the amount of rumours going around saying that Kmart would close shop there and open a Target store because they were owned by the same company, the feeling that, a Target store would actually work better here. And you'd have customers come in and say, so when are you closing? And it's just... Well, things have gone
it's
flipped over, and Target is
definitely the other way around now.
Is really, really struggling in Australia. Kmart has reinvented itself a couple of times, and pretty much all home brand stuff, to the extent that they, for a brief time, and it failed miserably as far as I can tell, but for a brief time, their home brand of Anko, which was a constriction of the word...
something and co.
Home and Co, or Kids and Co, and so they opened up Anko stores in the US.
Right.
To sell Anko branded stuff. It didn't go terribly well as far as I can tell, and I don't think it exists anymore. But
yeah, I do not think that brand can support a whole store, no.
Well, it just goes to show that it is such a fickle thing, and people make really, really, really bad business decisions, even in really big companies. So I certainly did work at Kmart for 25 years.
Did you ever work an overnight shift?
I didn't work an overnight shift. I did, however, work in the store for 5 hours when I was the only person in the store. It was a public holiday, and at that stage, so I was with the company for 25 years. For 10 of those years, I was the paymaster, so I would run the payroll each week. Well, there was a public holiday where the store was closed, but due to the industrial agreement,
awards,
people were required to be paid on a certain day. So the only way that was going to happen is if the payroll was done on that closed public holiday. So I rocked up early in the morning. My boss let me in, switched off the alarms, and said, "Bye, give me a call when you're done." So, I did payroll. It was really, really weird being in that place completely on my own. And I joked with close staff members who asked, what was it like? And I said, well, my 15-minute break, I stripped off all my clothes and ran around the store naked. You didn't. I said, you're right. Yeah, it was kind of eerie.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like you at all.
Who knows? Who can say? But no, I never did a night shift. Certainly did some very, very late nights, especially when they were doing changeovers of stores and refits and things like that. But no, didn't do a night shift.
Right, well, that's where the conversation went after Kmart was brought up.
It was interesting that you mentioned the stickers on the DVDs. I certainly went through many iterations of how DVDs were presented on shelf, including security cases and security clips, the long red things that would clip straight through the middle of the case that had to be removed before you could actually open the case. And then Kmart went completely out of the audio-visual media side of things.
I believe EB is still operating on a empty cases that have to be filled at the counter model.
EB, yes.
Yes. EB Games, to be
Games.
clear. The
Yes.
electronics boutique.
Oh, yeah. You just can't have games in cases. So we certainly went through having to decase everything. It was a horrible, horrible, horrible job. And it was a horrible, horrible job having to work out which alphabet someone happened to use when they were filing something. The number of things that a certain staff member would file under T for the Empire Strikes Back, or the Elephant Man, or the... so you'd have a drawer full of T's. You go, no!
And the problem is, there are going to be some customers who expect that anyway.
Just... Anyway,
Right,
yes, so that was Kmart.
Yeah.
My life in Kmart. I started off in entertainment, media. We were even selling computers then, if you could call them that. Then moved to toys, then into payroll for a very long time, then had triplets. And
then you were
the
in general
shell shock
retail?
into general retail. Ended up as storeman, so I would take deliveries of large 40-foot containers with 10 pallets in them at the back door, and madly run around with a manual, not motorised pallet lifter, removing 10 pallets out of said trucks. Did a year of that, and
then you had problems with your back, and
I had all sorts of problems, and yeah. Anyway,
also this week, and I haven't brought this up to you.
No, this is going to be a complete surprise.
Because I thought it would be better if I didn't.
Oh.
I have a programming friend, Lexi.
Hi, Lexi.
She took a bunch of my advertising tweets for this show.
Right.
And ran them through Google's GPT-3, which is an AI that takes text and makes more text based on that text.
Right.
Which has produced some interesting results.
Okay, so it now produces its own episode advertisements?
Yeah. For example, The Princess Bride.
Right.
Generated one for. This week on Cellulose Free, our intrepid hosts finally tackle the classic film, love, hate, adventure, and a very special appearance from a beloved family member.
Love, true love.
The Dark Crystal. Colin and Thomas take a break from the real world and enter the world of puppets. No, not those puppets.
I'm glad you kept these. This is...
The Poseidon Adventure.
Oh.
It's a race against time to get to the end of the episode before the credits do. And then there's just a bunch that don't have any particular title.
What is disturbing is that all three of those films are on the shelf.
Oh yeah.
Although the Poseidon Adventure is the remake.
There's a bunch here that don't have any titles attached to them. For example, Colin and Thomas come to blows over a misunderstanding that may or may not have actually happened. Thomas and Colin have a conversation.
Oh, right.
That's it. That's
it, yeah.
That's the whole
I think we
whole
should use
tagline.
that every week.
Yeah. We take a break from movies to check out some new shows on the telly.
On the telly?
Yeah, the telly.
Wow. Wow, this is a very English Google. That being said, I grew up calling it the telly.
Colin and Thomas continue their discussion of the listener-suggested film A Christmas Story, with special attention paid to the many fine legumes within.
I remember a very fine leg, but no legumes.
No. I like that this one implies that we've had to dedicate 2 episodes to this film.
You'll take your eye out.
Colin cooks a pizza, Thomas cuts a cake, and they both lose their minds a bit. Sounds like a normal episode.
It does sound like a normal episode.
Thomas becomes a one-man crime wave, Colin repeatedly spoils things, and the episode limps to a close. Colin and Thomas have a discussion about a film they both kind of like, and then one of them vomits.
Oh dear.
We learn about the perils of eating foods that come in a tube. An important phone call interrupts the recording, so Thomas and Colin just talk about some other stuff instead. Which again sounds like a normal episode. Thomas makes a confession. Colin is accused of heresy, and the podcast enters dangerous new territory.
Oh dear.
And those are some highlights.
Those are some highlights.
Thanks, Lexi.
Thanks, Lexi, for those.
Apparently,
they have made my day.
That cost $1.50 to generate all of those.
Wow. We're indebted then as
Yeah.
well. We'll have to keep on putting out this wonderful content. Just
I must continue to feed content into
yes.
the machine.
Yes. Is there anything else?
No, I don't think there was anything on Facebook.
All right. We shall move on then.
Pick a film for next week so we can go to bed. It's your turn.
It is. I have made my selection.
Ooh.
So I expressed certain displeasure in the main actor of today's movie.
Uh-huh.
You expressed some displeasure in him last week as well.
He has his ups and downs.
He does.
And those downs are very down.
Yep. So on the shelf, we don't have The Truman Show.
No.
We do have 3 films that feature Jim Carrey on the shelf. Would you believe?
Think, without even
No,
hearing a word, I can guess which one you're thinking of.
Okay, but hang on. One of those is Horton Hears a Who as the voice of Horton.
Yep.
So that leaves 2 others. One of which isn't on my list of films that I want to watch, but one is. So this is a second competition. Once Thomas has worked out what film we're going to be watching next week, because I am going to watch another Jim Carrey film, I want, as a second competition, you get a second guess to see if you can guess what other Jim Carrey film is on the shelf.
Okay.
All right.
So,
next week,
I now know exactly what all 3 films are, and I can tell why you've not picked the second one. The film that we are watching next week is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Ooh, you took a big risk there, because actually we are going to be watching Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which you have not seen?
I've not seen it, no.
Okay.
I have an idea of how it goes.
All right.
Because it's a film that gets talked about a lot.
It does indeed. And I think I have only seen it once. But my recollection is that Jim Carrey actually absolutely nails his role in this. So I'm going to be interested to see whether that is still my opinion when we watch it again next week. I'm going to attempt to read a plot synopsis. From acclaimed writer Charlie Kaufman and visionary director Michel Gondry comes Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. An all-star ensemble cast shines in this comical and poignant look at breakups, breakdowns, and breakthroughs. Joel, Jim Carrey, is stunned to discover that his girlfriend Clementine, Kate Winslet, has had their tumultuous relationship erased from her mind. Out of desperation, he contacts the inventor of the process, Dr. Howard Mierzwiak, Tom Wilkinson, to get the same treatment. But as his memories of Clementine begin to fade, Joel suddenly realizes how much he still loves her. Kirsten Dunst, Mark Ruffalo, and Elijah Wood co-star in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, a memorable film that the Wall Street Journal calls a romantic comedy unlike any other.
Well, there we go.
That is what we are watching next week.
It is described in the genre box in the My Movies database as a drama and not a comedy.
Fair enough. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. That's what we're watching next week. We hope that you can join us. But until then, we'll catch you next time.
And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
You have been listening to Cellulose Free. Your hosts were Colin, who produces and edits the show, and Thomas, who makes the artwork and music. Cellulose Free is recorded in the Deranged Cat Studios in scenic Tasmania, Australia. We keep track of our extensive physical media collection through My Movies, which we highly recommend. You can find links to that, as well as other places you can find us in the show notes. Cellulose Free is a Hi Hello production.
Yeah,
You've been holding on to that all evening, haven't you?
I have, yes.
Oh, well played, sir. Well played. I will pay you that. Okay, bye.
You don't pay me at all. I do this work for free.
What? That's madness. Why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
Why would I do that? Why are we doing this?
For free.
Oh, okay. What's that noise?
It's me blinking.
Me bashing the microphone cord.
Oh.
I bet you I've been doing that through the whole